Welcome back to the Comics Aficionados, live right here on Thinking Critical YouTube. Saturday morning with the special guest. We got Kevin. Is it Grevioux or Grevioux?
Actually, it's Grevioux.
Grevioux.
Yeah, Grevioux rhymes with previous.
Very nice.
Right.
You got one of those names. When I see it, I get intimidated.
Yeah, I've heard that before. No. So we're good.
And obviously, most of the viewers are going to know you because you created the Underworld franchise, Frankenstein, Blue Marvel, just a ton of stuff, lots of acting credits. You were in Star Trek, which I definitely want to talk to you about. So a man that doesn't really need an introduction. And is it the best voice in all of comic books?
I'm leaning towards yes.
Yeah. So how you doing today, Kevin?
I'm good. I'm always down to talk about comic books and genre stuff, all things genre. So I'm hanging in there. You know, we're going through a strike right now with both SAG and the Writers Guild, WGA. So that's been kind of wearing on everyone. You know, hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but you know, I'm really not sure. You know, if I'm optimistic, I think it'll end in October. There are some things in my gut that says this could extend until next year, you know.
I thought initially it could go on for a long time. And now that I'm starting to see that more of the elites, like the bigger wig kind of guys, their deals are getting suspended.
Yeah.
I think once you start like getting some of the upper echelon people, everyone has a bigger reason to get to the table.
Yeah, exactly. Now, whether or not they do, that's another story. I mean, we're talking about, you know, certain issues are a problem. You know, the numbers, you know, from streaming. You know, the studios don't want to disclose those. You know, and I think you're going to have to be forthcoming if you want real transparency on both sides, and you want to be able to trust each other. There's also the issue of AI. And, you know, AI, I think, is an important topic. There is an aspect of it that I think is much ado about nothing. Because, truth be told, I think if AI becomes what everyone fears it will be, well, audiences aren't going to need the studios either, because they can make their own content. You know, yeah. And so I don't know if it's really going to get to that point, but you know, I could be wrong. You never know, because they're doing some amazing things with AI. They really are. But yeah,
as somebody that's a genre guy, the biggest fear is Skynet, though, right?
yeah, you can say that too. So,
we have like
they say, you know, the AI goes on strike because they're writing the scripts, and then they decide to take over the world.
Yeah, you know, like I said, you know, I don't know, you know, the things I've been hearing about AI, some of the guys I know who are deep into it on the IT level, you know, they say, yeah, it can do amazing things, but there's going to need to be so much human interaction. It's not really worth getting that upset about, but I will say this, just in case it does, then I think the unions, the creative unions, need to, you know, be prepared to fight against it, you know, just in case.
You know, as a content creator, I use AI a little bit, and every once in a while I'll have like I don't understand what the thumbnail should be that's really gonna, you know, get across the point that I want to have for people to come into the video. You know, if you go into AI, you go to ChatGPT, you're like, thumbnail ideas for a video like this, and you know, every once in a while it has a couple of them that you're like, oh, actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a good collaborator to bounce things off of. I don't know though if it's going to come up with these amazing creative ideas that you say, oh, that's $1 million, you know, idea, you know, high concept, blah blah blah. It will only regurgitate what you put in. You know what I'm saying? So we'll just have to say it.
In my limited experience with playing with it, it's useful if you don't want to do anything creative at all. If you just want it to regurgitate, you know, a build me an HR policy for this type of company. That's useful because there's a billion examples. Write a cool science fiction story. It has all the creativity of, well, my dog.
But if you do ask it, I want to, what is an idea to display this kind of characteristic? Like, it'll give you a scene and explain why this will do that and that. But obviously, that's all coming in from human interaction with it.
Yeah, true. Like I say, we'll see, in the coming years, what it's going to, what it's ultimately going to be. Right now, I'm not too worried about it.
Definitely don't want to be signing over those likeness rights in perpetuity.
Oh yeah,
I could just make digital versions of you.
Exactly. And I think that some of the studios are being insidious about it as well. Because, why would you want to do that? You hire an actor for, a particular job. And then, months later or years later, you can use that same digital, character in a walkthrough or a simple scene. I'm like, no, pay the actor again. They've got to pay them again. I'm all for it. The same rate. But, there are also different aspects that come with you being on set. Things like meal penalties. Things like, forced calls, meaning that if they go past a certain time, they can't, you need to have a 12-hour turnaround. So that's another day's work. You know what I'm saying? Off the top. So things
kids,
like
I think, are limited. If you have child actors,
exactly.
You can only film so many hours a day.
Exactly. All that stuff. So, so my thing is, a lot of things that come with that. So yeah, they need to be taken care of.
Very nice. Well, let's see who else is with us. Gervais, you haven't been here in like a month or so. What you been up to?
I've been up to a few things here and there. I, for one, can't wait for AI to take over. I have a few people I need to deep fake. So when it comes to doing things in life, so for me, AI will be a blessing and a boon. But yeah, just been busy getting things ready for the website. Looking forward, if everything goes well, to do a launch in October. But that's been the main thing I've been concerned with. But I'm glad to be on this panel today with my man Kevin, and can't wait to talk about all these groovy things in terms of AI and strikes and what's going on with him and Darkstorm and all that good stuff. So looking forward to that.
No, good.
Yeah, Kevin's a mover and shaker. We got a lot of projects here now. Jim, you and I have a podcast that's going to be starting next week. I'm going to be on your show. You're going to be on my show, but it's going to be like on Patreon or whatever, right?
That is correct. That's what I've been told.
Yeah, well, I launched the Patreon today, and I definitely want to give a big shout out to Yule and JK, the first two supporters.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. We're going to end up doing some extra comic stuff because there's not enough podcasts out there.
Absolutely. Now, Jim, everybody wants to know, did you almost die this week?
No, I didn't. I actually, thanks for people wondering that in the chat, because I haven't had any videos on the YouTube channel. And I explained to them, and I told you that with the guy who I do my regular DC Comics podcast stepping away, I really didn't have a lot of time. So I'll get back to the videos, and then me and you have our thing going on. The thing about that, once I hear about AI, first off, I thought Allen Iverson, and I was all excited. But then once we get past that, I use the Chat GPT. I try to use it to be like a magic mirror. I asked it if I'm pretty and stuff, and it never lets me know anything. It won't give me a definitive answer. I get real pissed off.
There you go. You got to use it to straighten your life out, Jim.
Well,
but your YouTube stuff's going to come back up.
Yes. Yeah. I actually, somebody thought I was suspended. Yes, 9 guests. 9 people I recorded our regular podcast this week is over 6 hours now. And I knew it was going to get that way, because every time you do something with one person, you tend to kind of yip and yap and go on and on. So it was kind of a crazy deal.
Very nice. We've also got the resident comic book retailer, the proprietor of Fantastic Comics, Hugh Carter. How you doing, Hugh?
I'm wonderful. Excuse me. Thanks for having me on. Nice to meet you, Kevin.
You as well, sir.
I think you have a brother that lives up in Northern California at all?
Yeah. Steven. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Oakland, yeah.
Yeah, I've helped him out a few times. And
Okay,
he never
cool.
says this is my brother, but when you see the last name, you have to ask.
Exactly.
That's when we used to hold other people's credit cards, but yeah, now it's just a tap. I have to tell you, everybody out there, that I have a YouTube channel. We're gonna get monetized soon. By the way, I'm really excited.
Yeah, you got a big
for no
big guest
reason
on Tuesday, right?
I do. I'm going to have Joe Casey on, so this will be live for the first time on my channel. It will be the last time he'll be on the channel that you'll be able to ask him questions without super chatting, you know what I mean? So make sure you show up 8 o'clock on the West Coast. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Joe Casey's an absolute legend.
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah. Last but not least, Doc, you and I are also going to have some stuff for the Patreon as well. How you doing, buddy?
Yes, we are. I'm the lone regular of the panel without a YouTube channel, mostly because I'm a slacker and I just like to ride your coattails. But that's fine. So there is going to be a Doc is Right tier for the Patreon, and if enough people sign up, you might actually get Wes to admit all of the many thousand times that I am right and he is wrong. So, but no. So we're gonna be doing some stuff for the Patreon. That'll be fun. There's gonna be some Q&A stuff. There's gonna be more weekly reviews, I think. You'll be able to it'll be more than just whatever Wes decides to subject me to this week on what the most terrible things are that are being published. Maybe people will actually suggest good comics for me to read.
Absolutely not. Let's hear from the people. We do have a few super chats to get real quick. Kenneth Dally says, hello, guys, and hello to our new guest. I was scheduled to work today, but it got canceled, so I got a hot, delicious breakfast and joined the channel. Well, that is awesome. You joined into the right channel, or the right panel today. Kevin is absolutely a wealth of knowledge when it comes to geek culture, obviously screenwriter, comic book writer, and he's got all these wonderful credits on things that he's worked on. Absolutely insane what I was reading up on your entire bio. There's so many things I'd forgotten about.
I prepared for Kevin's appearance because he has done a lot of things involving vampires with my breakfast of choice, Count Chocula. So thank you for being the inspiration this morning.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite cereals when I was a kid too.
Hated
Frankenberry.
I think I may have missed out not having the doc review of Suffering for September be Fire and Ice, Welcome to Smallville #1. I hope it's worth the week. Well, your hopes are correct. That is what we are going to review on Monday. It's not a great comic book. Wraith X7. Hi, Kevin. I have two questions. Did Blue Marvel's wife also age slowly? And what are Blue Marvel's weaknesses and limitations?
Yeah. The way I looked at it is that because they're in close proximity, his wife was receiving, residual antimatter radiation that actually slowed her aging as well. It also kind of aided in them being able to hide, as well. And as far as weaknesses and limitations, I did not write him to be all powerful. I wrote him to be on the same tier as, Thor, Hulk, Superman, Sentry level, but, unfortunately in comic books, there are inconsistencies with power levels. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes it can get a little ridiculous, and then some writers just go off the rails to the point where it doesn't even make any sense anymore, even when it comes to, speculative fiction or fantasy. It's just a little bit too much. As far as weaknesses, he doesn't have any weaknesses other than those that are concomitant with, just good storytelling. Like, he doesn't have a kryptonite. The only thing that might affect him is what I call neutronium, which basically just makes his powers more unstable. That's all. but not weaker. Like kryptonite makes Superman weaker. You know, if there's too much in the area, it can make him stronger. And like I said, you know, that's the only quote unquote weakness, I guess you would say that he has.
We haven't seen Blue Marvel since what, like 2008?
No, he was in
Ultimates.
the Ultimates, the one from the Marvel Now.
Yeah, and I think he made some appearances in like the Squadron Supreme miniseries.
Mhm.
There was something called Defenders Beyond he was in recently. I know Christos Gage, who I did a What If with years ago. He's gonna have him as a guest star in one of his Spider-Man Spider-Man miniseries he's doing. So he's made, you know, some small appearances here and there.
Man, very nice. I'm a big fan of Christos Gage. People don't realize he wrote the very first season of Daredevil, I believe, with his wife.
Yeah,
He's a talented writer.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Kenneth says, shout out to Gervain. How have you been, sir? I was in Chicago this summer. Great city. Congrats to you on his channel. Proud of you, man.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I'm glad to hear you were in Chicago. I am disappointed that you think it's a great city, but that's okay. I will hold that against you. New York is a great city, and I know that because New York represented. Yeah, New York represented hard last night at the Taste of Chicago for the Hip Hop 50. I was down there with my girls. We had EPMD come through. They had KRS-One, South Bronx, and had Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick. And New York came, saw, and conquered. It was great. Nice to have a slice of home in the city that I happen to live in.
Wow, that's how I am up in San Francisco, or East Bay, I should say.
I didn't mind Chicago. The only thing about Chicago I didn't like really was the traffic.
I hate the roads. Any of the roads.
Yeah, the roads there are so many potholes. It's like I don't think they need speed bumps because there's so many.
I'm pretty sure Beirut, following like 1981, had nicer roads than Chicago does currently. And they were at least had an excuse of we were bombed. So
But I haven't been to Chicago in a while, but you know, I like the pizza, I like the hot dogs, I like good sports.
You like the pizza?
Now, you know, I try to tell everyone that Chicago has the best pizza on the planet.
Gervain is out of his mind. I like thin crust pizza too, but the deep dish with the sauce on top is how you do it.
Okay, but now I will tell you that, you know, having been born there, that deep dish pizza is a tourist pizza.
Mm-hmm.
That really didn't come along until like the mid 70s. Traditional Chicago pizza is thin crust. It's just that it has they cut it in, you know, squares. They call it tavern or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better than New York pizza.
Yeah. I think there are two.
What?
What show did I walk onto here?
I know.
Pizza aficionados. We always do this.
Pizza aficionados. What about pizza roll aficionados?
Chicago pizza is basically cake with sauce on it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. Well, like I said, I remember from the old days.
I had a better pizza when I was in Italy. We've got the guys from Sigma Comics. Shout out to the Thinking Critical team from Miami, still on vacation, but encouraging you all to support these great guys. Hit the like button and back issue 7 on Kickstarter. That is right. Issue 7 of Here Comes Calico is live on Kickstarter right now, and a well-deserved vacation for HH and the team at Sigma Comics. They've been traveling America for what feels like 2 years straight, getting the word out about their comic book and hitting all the comic book or the Comic-Con on the scene. So congratulations. Enjoy your downtime, and hopefully everything goes well on the Kickstarter. Speaking of Kickstarters, you've got a Kickstarter coming out soon, right? Right, Kevin?
Yeah,
is it
yes,
Rise
I
of
do.
the Djinn?
Yeah.
Gentara.
It's called Gentara, Rise of the Djinn, and I'm launching on September 12th. You know, which is Tuesday, and you know, it's a story that I've had in my head for a while. You know, it's about a terminally ill police detective who discovers that she's a member of an ancient race of jinn, you know, genies, and you know, she becomes embroiled in their world, well, on the hunt for this serial killer that has gripped, the DVM, which is the Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland area. And I did it with my friends, Joe Bruscia and Ralph Tedesco over at Zenescope. And, great bunch of guys, they saw my vision, what I was trying to do. It came out as a 3-issue miniseries a couple of years ago, but now I'm collecting it as a trade with new material and a new cover by Ron Garney,
Love Ron Garney.
Yeah, oh yeah, great guy. Well, one of the all-time great guys and great nice guys in the comic book industry. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So,
He came out for an
yeah.
interview. He's great.
Yeah. So yeah, we got that coming up.
So this is the Zenescope series, but it's being collected and then produced also under your new imprint. Or it's not really an imprint. I guess it's a publishing company.
Yeah. It's not really a new thing. I've had it for quite some time. I just use it on certain occasions. Running a comic book company amidst all the other things that I'm doing can be, a Herculean task, to say the least. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, I try to, like when I write a screenplay, I create a comic book to go with it, So I also have that, credit on my lexicon within my lexicon. It also enables me to do other things, with some IP that I have, getting it out there. I don't really care about my sales because, aside from, kickstarting, I don't know, or I should say crowdfunding, I don't know how much money there is in comics. You know what I'm saying? And so I didn't care about my sales or whatever. I got into comics for the love of the game, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Because I like looking at something I created and holding it in my hands and seeing my creative fruits come to fruition and all that. So it's really good.
Are you an old school comic geek? Did you start reading when you were a little kid, or maybe when you were older?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna say I was older. I am a monster kid, really. I didn't get into comic books until late, and I call late 12 years old because.
Oh, I started in my 30s, so I was later.
Yeah. So I was into Hot Wheels. That was my first. The first thing I collected. I remember when they came out, and I was really into, like I said, model building, monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, werewolves, things like that, and that lasted until today. It's just that I discovered comic books much later. Like around 75 is when I got into it. And it was just a whole world just opened up, and I've been a fan ever since.
So I have a question. Actually.
Yes, sir.
What you mentioned before, like whenever you do a screenplay for, when you're working on a new screenplay, you tend to do a comic alongside it. Is that kind of so you already have like some existing, almost like storyboarding to, kind of get a visual and show people like visually what you're aiming for with the story?
Yeah, the latter is true, not the former. In other words, comics don't always work as storyboards the way people think. I mean, sometimes they can. Like if you look at what Robert Rodriguez did with Sin City, and you juxtapose that with Frank Millar's book, he essentially lifted panels. But Frank thinks cinematically. But yes, in terms of visuals, you are correct. Because what a lot of people don't understand is that, Hollywood, a lot of the support in Hollywood, like your producers, your readers, your development executives, they are not very creative and not visionaries. And so you have to lead them with what you might be thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
if you look at, like, I will be honest with you, even though I'm a genre guy, when I first read The Matrix back in the 90s when it was called Mainframe, I had trouble visualizing what they were trying to do. The only thing I do know is that I love the dialogue and parts of the story, but I didn't really know what they were doing until I saw the trailer, and I said, I know exactly what they're doing now. So the visuals aid in that, because you can get a producer or a reader, and a lot of producers rely on readers in terms of, finding out or deciphering what the story is about. And if they get it wrong, well, then the producer's going to get it wrong. So the comic book, or graphic novel aids in that visual process. One of the things that used to happen back in the day is that you hand in a screenplay or submit a screenplay, a development executive would have to come home with like 10 scripts for the weekend and read all of them. And they used to have this, this fiat that if it didn't grab them in the first 10 pages, then they would just toss it. It wasn't exciting to them. Well, I've always thought that was foolish, because some stories don't get going until later. However, let's say you had a graphic novel to take home and read over the weekend. Now you can see what it is that the creator was talking about or what they're doing. And you can make that determination as to whether or not it's worth it a lot easier. You also know that if the visuals are strong enough, if you don't jump on it, some other producer will. So it's a great boon in that sense.
Okay, go ahead, Wes. So no, you did.
Speaking of the Matrix thing, I remember watching the movie and being so confused. I was like, what is going on here? And then you get the moment where Morpheus sits down with Neo and he explains to him that he's a battery. And it finally all hit me at one moment. I was like, oh my goodness. This is the most insane concept I've ever seen.
Exactly.
It was a great aha moment. I'm sorry, Doc. I love
No, you're fine, man. I was just curious. Yeah, so it's kind of like you're able to visually at least give them a feeling of the visual vibe that you're going for, even if it doesn't look like a shot for shot remake.
Exactly. Conceptually, they can see it right there, and they know whether or not they like it or not.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Frank Miller, because they pretty much took 300 scene for scene as well. Yeah, but he was also a screenplay writer.
Yes, he is. So like I said, he thinks cinematically.
Yeah, very interesting stuff there. So what I like on some of the stuff that you're doing, you're talking about the Gentara, where she's a police officer, but also Darkstorm is like I think, is he an ex-Marine, or he is a Marine?
Yeah, ex-Marine. It's kind of.
I like how you're not shying away from people that are police or military, because everybody wants to demonize us nowadays.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, truth be told, when it comes to, like, let's say the movies, your action heroes are really going to be military guys and cops. You know what I'm saying? Because who else has permission to be, a hard rock? You know what I'm saying? Who else knows how to use guns, or assassins, So, I'm very interested in that. I didn't have the privilege to serve, but, military guys, I think are, the pinnacle of, human, hard rockness, So I really like those guys. Like all the machinery,
I had to work with a bunch of Army guys when I was in the Air Force. It's crazy what they do to those guys, because they work them so hard. They'll be like 26 years old, and they'll need a shoulder transplant, or their knees are busted for life because they just PT them and have them out training so hard.
Oh, yeah. I have, a bunch of friends who served, and, some of the stories they tell me, it gives you a newfound respect for, what they do and what they go through. You know what I'm saying? Especially now that we found out more about PTSD, and, just some of the stories you hear about, these, these I keep misremembering the name, but I think it's IEDs.
Mhm.
IUDs.
Yeah,
Improvised
and how,
explosive device.
yeah, and it's like people who just miss stepping on them. You know what I'm saying? And then what happens to you when you just miss stepping on it? It's like, and then, I heard one of my friends who's a Navy SEAL, he told me this one story where I can't remember where they were, but one of the um, enemy soldiers shot an RPG into camp. And one of the RPGs hit his platoon sergeant in the back, who had his flak jacket on and some other things, and it stuck there and fizzled out. And the guy just started laughing, and it's like, whoa, But stuff like that is not uncommon, and just imagine what it does to you. I mean, we look at movies and we see these guys doing heroic things, and that's all fine and well, but they go through a lot.
I've never heard the story about the RPG getting stuck in the arm or the plate. That's crazy.
Yeah, really.
Goodness. Oh man, that's not what you want to go. So obviously PTSD is very important to you. I know that the character Darkstorm, like that's one of his obstacles that he's getting through as well. Although he doesn't really like superheroes very much.
Yeah. In the world in which Darkstorm lives and operates, superheroes do good, but what they don't realize is that there is an evil force that controls the way the world works on so many different levels that they kind of don't realize that they're actually working for this evil entity, the shadow government or whatever. Only maybe one or two people might know. And so when you think about it's kind of like me taking aspects of what happens in comic books now, where you don't see them go into like the third world. They pick their targets, things like that. Now we don't talk about that. Why is it that they're always in New York but nowhere else? Things like that. And so what I did is I expanded on that and said, they do things that are politically expedient, and they don't do everything they're supposed to do. Where Darkstorm sees that and he's like, this is a game they're playing, and then they come in and they interfere with military operations that are sensitive, and they don't know what they're doing, and so he has a problem with them, and one of them was on one mission, heroes were responsible for the death of one of his men, and so he really has a thing against them, and so once he becomes one, he's like, well, I'm going to set this whole thing straight. This is how we're going to do things from now on, against what they want to do. And so you have that, natural conflict,
Because his point of view is coming from something that's completely opposite.
Yeah, exactly. His point of view is that, right, you always do what's right. You don't pick and choose what's right or wrong, And and that's something I've seen. The concept of right or wrong is something I've seen really been watered down in modern comics. It used to be that heroes were heroes no matter what. And even those heroes who were anti-heroes or had a different point of view, they were coming from the standpoint, they always want to do what's right, no matter what it takes. Now, I don't think you can tell the difference, morally speaking, or through the actions, who's a hero and who's, a villain. They make excuses for the villains. They don't want them to be as villainous. And the heroes aren't very heroic anymore. And that bothers me,
Yeah.
It used to be that comic books, and I think this is a function of, maybe the evolution of our society, maybe, but I think that comic books were simple morality plays. You know what I'm saying? Good versus evil, boys medium, teaching them right from wrong, and then as things go on, well, we start bringing politics into it and going too far with that, and they become something that they were never meant to be, and I think that's why the sales are suffering right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a gray, muddy mess when it comes to the idea of morality and ethics and right and wrong. I
Yes.
I like a lot of what you were saying. It has. I know that back in the day, I remember one of the things I remember you did. You did one piece that I remember for Wildstorm on Wetworks.
Yes.
And so I was a huge Wildstorm guy, and there's little bits of elements of kind of some of the things that Mark Millar and Warren Ellis both tackled in The Authority, with I don't remember if you remember a book that was called Stormwatch Team Achilles.
I remember Stormwatch, yes.
Well, Team Achilles was kind of the second iteration of the book.
Right.
And it was a guy that was a former military guy that didn't like superheroes, and you could see that he basically ran a group that would take them down when they crossed the line.
Yeah.
But as the story went on, he started basically surrounding himself on his strike team with more and more superheroes.
Right.
And that kind of, him falling into that gray kind of morass between what he saw as ethically right and wrong. So I like it. It's got some things that we haven't seen tackled a lot recently.
Yes. And that's what I try to do, with a lot of the things that I write and get into.
It almost feels like the universal truths. Nobody wants to accept that certain things are right and wrong. Like you shouldn't steal from people, no matter who it is.
Yeah. And it's it's kind of frustrating. I used to be one of those cats who was in the store every Tuesday. A lot of people don't remember that it wasn't always Comic Book Wednesday. Comics used to come out on Tuesday. Like when I used to go to this place called Comics and Comics in Berkeley. You didn't like them, huh?
Well, when I first moved up here, I actually applied there, and then I got a job at Comic Relief, the first retailer appreciation Eisner Award-winning store to that year. So I worked at the other one. But
Fantastic Comics is in Berkeley. That's probably the competition.
No, they're not around
Not
anymore.
anymore.
Comics and Comics is kapoots.
Yeah. When I was
sorted, the end of that, because it changed hands, but the owner at the end, he did some pretty shady stuff, from what I understand. A comic book store owner doing something shady. I can't.
Oh, really? Yeah. But it was the first store, Comics and Comics. Yeah. That was the first comic store I went to that sold new comics. Growing up, because I grew up born in Chicago, from Minnesota, but we lived all over the country, and one of the places we lived was New Jersey. And the comic book stores back then were just, like used bookstores for comic books. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have Diamond accounts then, I don't think, not until, I think Diamond came along in 76 or 77 or something like that. I can't remember.
So I think Comics and Comics, I was just talking about this yesterday. I think they may have been involved in distributing out here. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I think Bud Plant was involved in some distributing. And then when I don't know. I kind of get this story. I was just talking about it yesterday, and then Diamond basically got a foothold by buying into something.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
think Bud Plant was involved in the distribution, so it probably wasn't Comics and Comics, but I don't know my Bay Area comic history.
Yeah. And we got
100%.
there in 80. Yeah, the tail end of 80. And that's when I started going there. And, I remember a little while before, you might remember this. There was a diamond on some of the comic books, I think it was surrounding the number or the price, I'm not sure. And everyone questioned the comics authenticity. Are these going to be worth anything? I mean, what are these?
The Whitman variants.
Yeah.
No, I think you mean like when they went direct market, and if you go to the newsstand, it would be 75 cents. But if you go into the comic store, it was like the triangle instead, and it would say 75 cents.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell it was, it doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on the numbers. Can I ask you a question, Kevin? Because you had been talking about the actor and writer strike going on, and how streaming networks aren't really talking about their numbers, and it's all very nebulous what people are being, contracts are out there. Obviously, people can see that those kind of numbers, but it's kind of the same thing that's going on in comics right now. You said that like numbers were dwindling. I'm only ever really care about the store more than the entirety of the industry, but I do still pay attention to it, obviously. But we aren't getting any numbers from any companies. We aren't getting any numbers from any distribution. It's all extrapolated from like 130 stores that are on Comic Hub, which is not even counting places that call themselves stores but don't even have new books. If they're getting into that pool of, if we're looking at them also in that big number, they should be aced out entirely anyway. I shouldn't even consider them as a store. If you're just doing variant covers and selling them online, if you're not a brick and mortar, I don't really care if you buy 10 copies of Spider-Man. It doesn't do it for me. But these guys aren't telling us the numbers either. What do you how do you feel about that?
I don't, I never really cared before, but once I broke into the industry, I saw how important they were to the company or your editor or whatever. Like I remember the Blue Marvel, for instance. Well, before I get into Blue Marvel, I did the 4th iteration of the New Warriors, and it didn't set any records, but it sold out. And it sold issue 1 sold 57,000 copies. And that was looked upon as decent, but the numbers kept dwindling from there. And it's like, okay, well, why? And that's when I started to learn more about the industry from a business standpoint, that your first issue is always going to sell more. Then there's a precipitous drop off, from there until it gets to a stable place, maybe after, I don't know, issue 12 or whatever. I'm not really sure. But then you start to see different shenanigans, or tactics they use, guest stars to bring numbers up, maybe subject matter. I remember with Blue Marvel, that didn't sell very well. Now, it's worth a lot if you can look at eBay, but I think that's because of something I did and why the price went up so fast, but originally it was I pitched it as an 8-issue miniseries. They gave me 6, and then the numbers came out for the first issue, and then they said, nah, we're going to drop it to 5. And I was like, you're kidding me. And so I said, can I at least have a double size issue 5? And they said, yeah, because I had these big battle scenes planned. And, my thing is, look, comics are not about the fights, but you know what? They are, the way I look at comic books is that they're like a book version of a Saturday afternoon matinee. You know what I'm saying? So it should be wall-to-wall action. I remember something that Denny O'Neil said back in the day. that each comic book should have 2 fights and 3 if you can fit it in. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I like. But yeah, you know, the numbers, I wish they were more forthcoming, because you can, even though they're not, you can see some of the shenanigans endemic within the way the industry treats them. Like, look at what's the name of that website, ICV2. So it used to be the top 300. Now it's the top 500. And you have some books, you know, from some companies I've even worked for, that are selling like, you know, 400 units. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, it's really significant when you look at what comic books are selling across the planet. That means 400 units are selling, you know, across the planet, you know, for that particular issue. I kind of look at the comic book industry as like a pie chart. I hope I don't go too tangential with this. I'm a big football fan, and so I look at, like, let's say the LA Coliseum as a pie chart representing 100,000 fans. And when you get the sales numbers in, you kind of see, you know, what that kind of looks like if you look at the stadium. And it's like, man, a book that sells 5,000, that's not very many people. Not very many people at all. And then when you start looking at realizing that across the planet, there are like, what, 300,000, 350,000 fans. This is a very small industry. And it should be that they'd be able to sell more, but they don't seem to want to. Sometimes I think they don't want people to really see how the industry works, or they don't want it to be too out there, because I don't know. I used to think they were hiding something more, being more insidious, because they didn't want parents, you know, looking at their books and seeing what they're really selling to these kids, you know, which I think is loose morality, where before you could trust comics. Now I don't think you can.
I definitely feel that way about a lot of mediums right now.
Yeah.
It feels like the comic industry likes being a club, and if they were actually successful, I think a lot of the like if the industry was that successful and was able to grow to, you know, an actual industry, if you have 300,000 customers out of 8 billion on the planet, you're not even an industry at that point. You're a niche. You're barely a hobby. So if they were able to reach a couple, you know, even 100 million people out of a set almost 8 billion, now you're talking about an actual industry. And I'm pretty sure a lot of them wouldn't be included in an actual industry because they're just not that good.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and, you know, I've often tried to figure out, you know, well, what happened? Of course, you could say that the destruction of the newsstand, you know, and the rise of the, you know, the direct market, you know, I think a big impediment to comics growing is the price point.
Amen.
You know? I mean, you know, it used to be that my father would fall asleep on the couch and his change would, you know, drop from his pockets. And so, you know, you go into the seat cushions.
That's a comic book there.
Yeah.
35. I needed a dime also, so a nickel or a dime.
Yeah. But when I started, they were only 25 cents. And so it's like there was nothing I couldn't buy, and I could try out a lot of books. You know, a kid getting into comics now can't try out anything. You know, I don't know.
I don't know if I could pay rent selling a quarter comic, though. Gotta let you know.
Yeah.
But if you're selling,
I mean, you know how many comics I gotta sell to make that happen.
Yeah. Now, of course you're right. But you know, they just, you know, were so inexpensive for so long then for them to just meteorically shoot up in price, it's like, my goodness. I remember I was at one of my local comic shops a couple, years ago, and I was gonna buy Thor #1, the one done by John Romita Jr. And I remember, the guy said, $4.36 or something like that. And I had to pull out a $5 bill. And I looked at the $5 bill and looked at the book, looked at the $5 bill, looked at the book. I said, never. He says, what? I said, you know what? The day I have to spend I pull out a $5 bill to pay for a single comic, I don't think I, need to have this as a hobby anymore. Not like that. Now,
Welcome to my side of this.
Wait, you're under $5, Javane, right? I mean, you're $5 and under.
I'm five and under, unless I go a week.
Power Rangers issue that's $7.99.
But that's the week that I only buy that book and one other book. So that's how that works. And that's with the new comic book day discount.
Guy.
That's right.
I like where Kevin's coming here. I feel like I can feel the Ferengi coming out of him. And you were an actor on DS9. You were also, I believe, on was it Next Generation?
Well. Let's clear something up.
Okay.
I was an extra on Deep Space Nine and the Next Generation. Mm-hmm. I did not want to be an actor. That was the furthest thing from my mind. I came out to Hollywood to be a screenwriter. Mm-hmm. It's just that a lot of people thought I had a look, a build, a size, a voice, whatever.
Absolutely.
And said that, you know what, maybe you could parlay that into something. So to make a living rather than, wait tables or, I did not want to go back into the laboratory. I decided to do extra work. And I was able to, eke out a living and then, really think about what I was doing and use extra work to further my career and dovetail into other things. So one of the things I've told people over the years is that if you're smart, look at extra work as the best free film school that you will ever attend. All you have to do, keep your mouth shut and observe and see what's going on and be strategic when you ask questions. And you'd be surprised what becomes evident, as to how to make it in the industry when you do that. And I met a lot of actors who I exchanged numbers with. I met Lynn Wiseman, the director of Underworld, as an extra. I was an extra on a movie called Stargate, and he was a prop assistant. And he thought I was someone famous. And I'm like, well, no. But we, struck up a friendship. We talked about a lot of movies we liked. We liked the same things, and we became friends. And so when Underworld, the opportunity to create Underworld came up, I was the person he called. And that's how, that happened. So yeah, I was just an extra back then, but extra work can do things for you.
Did you like Deep Space Nine?
I'll tell you something. I watched it the first 3 years, and I was like, okay. But I heard when I left, it got much better.
Oh yeah, once the Dominion show up, it really ups the stakes.
Once Next Generation got canceled and all the writers went from there to Deep Space Nine, that's when it got. So I've never seen seasons 4 through 7. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I got my Quirk shirt. Did you get to meet Armin?
Oh yeah, I knew Armin, Avery. Let me see. You got to meet the cast, and say hi. They knew my name, but I kept my distance, for the most part.
I love the character of Quark. I feel like he's the Rorschach of Star Trek. The one character that never bent or broke for anybody.
Yeah. But it was a fun experience. You know, there were certain things I didn't like about it. You know, most notably, the fact that I am still a big kid at heart. And so when you go on the set and you actually see that like the phasers are made of wood, you know, or like the Borg, or like the Borg suits, they're tooled because they put model parts on them. You know, the plastic models where all the pieces are on the skeleton. You know, they actually, you know, glue those to these black suits and paint them. And I'm like, oh man, you know, so sometimes you see little gun turrets, you know, from battleships. Yeah, exactly. And then the star field is velvet with just white dots on it. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to see this. Yeah, exactly.
Wood phasers are just wrong.
Oh yeah.
So you worked on a lot of movies. You mentioned Stargate. You had some extra work on Star Trek. You were in The Mask. Obviously, you were in the Underworld movie as well.
Yeah, I, you know, like acting, I kind of separate my acting from my extra work, because if you look at my extra work, I mean, I worked on Armageddon, you know, I also did stunt work too. So, you know, one of the stunt jobs I had was on Batman Forever. And I played one of Harvey Two-Face's thugs. You know, we had the split mask. I had the, you know, the ring in my nose, you know, and that was really fun. I knew, though, it was going to be a bad movie. You know, I remember, I remember after I got dressed, I went to the set to just see, you know, walk around. And man, I got to this jewelry store set that they had. And they had these big gaudy emeralds and diamonds. I'm like, you know what, or rubies. I said, he's making a TV show. He's making a TV show. And, you know, a lot of people just had real problems with it, even on set. But you know what? What are you going to do?
It was hard. It was hard to follow up Tim Burton like in his prime. Had a very distinct visual and idea of what Batman was going to be.
You know what, man? I don't think it was. I think that after Batman, what was it? Batman Returns, was it?
Yeah.
I think after Batman Returns, there was a feeling that it was too dark.
Yeah.
And you know, kids,
They want to sell kids
love, you know, love Batman, and so since parents complained, and you know, you can't dangle a carrot like that in front of kids and have them not see it. So they brought in Joel Schumacher to turn it down, tone it down, and to make it more fun, this, that, or the other. And we got Batman Forever, and subsequently Batman and Robin, which I was also in as a stuntman. I was in the prison scene when Bane broke out Arnold, Mr. Freeze. But I have not been able to finish watching that movie.
Not very good.
I've not been able to finish it. I'm like, my goodness, this is bad.
Clooney's a good actor, but he couldn't do that one.
Well, you know what was funny? I thought he made a good-looking Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But he was just given bad material.
Yep.
Couldn't do a thing with it. So, I mean, what are you going to do? That's just that. You know what? That's Hollywood.
It's a gig, right?
Yeah, that's Hollywood.
So let's hear from the people. We've got some people want to talk here. Kenneth says to Kevin, I agree with you. Heroes and power rankings. I've said before, my biggest complaint in comics is consistency with heroes and their powers. Example, Deathstroke beats Batman 1 minute. The next Bats beat Deathstroke easily.
Yeah. That's something that I've not been a fan of over the years. I remember the first time Batman and Deathstroke met. Deathstroke beat him like he stole something.
Absolutely. He's good. He's enhanced.
Yeah. You know, exactly. In fact, I've always thought that Deathstroke and Captain America are more equals. Batman should not be in Captain America's class. But you know, they say Cap is, you know, peak human and all that stuff. But that peak human that Captain America is really superhuman. I actually like the strength level of Cap in the Ultimates better, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the Cap that they use in the MCU, you know. So yeah.
They had a comic book with the last few years where Harley Quinn defeated Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman all at the same time.
Yeah.
Really?
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, a lot of it depends on, you know, politics. Like I remember how powerful, like my favorite Avengers story of all time is the Count Nefaria story. And, you know, when that came out, it was like, oh my goodness, this is what the Avengers are about. And, or, you know, maybe more so than the Avengers, this is what good comic book storytelling actually is. And, you know, Count Nefaria was seemingly unbeatable. Then, you know, he gets laid low, but years later, a stronger Count Nefaria is confronted by Wolverine, Luke Cage, and Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, and he gets beaten to within an inch of his life. And I'm like, wait a minute now. And I even asked Bendis, you know, is he, you know, was Nefaria full powered? He says, yep. I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm like, well, that's just the way it is.
Yep.
Common Sense wants to know, can you talk about Odyssey of Amazons? I thought James Gunn was going to adapt that in Paradise Lost because it's Wonder Woman exit, and our friend Jim said Odyssey of Amazon is worse than Historia. Jim, did you say that?
Ooh.
I don't remember that. I didn't actually even read Astoria, so I don't even know. I ended up reading the first issue of Astoria, and I got bored with it. I got really bored.
Common Sense, you wrong for that. You wrong.
Yeah, Astoria again, and the Odyssey of the Amazons. I will admit I didn't really love Odyssey of the Amazons, but that was way back when and whatnot. But the
You
whole
were new
deal
to comic books,
with
then. You probably
Astoria,
didn't know what you were reading.
yeah, I still don't. So that's the case as well. But I mean, everybody likes something and that other people like. But yeah, I didn't really read Astoria.
I mean, you know what? I mean, you know, sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss with assignments you're given, you know, and you have to understand too, there are editorial edicts that you have to follow, things like that. Some ideas just conceptually aren't very interesting, you know, and a lot of what you do has to do with what you're allowed to do, you know, how you feel about the assignment of your characters, things like that. And there are some things you try to do that would make a story more interesting, but, you know, they won't allow you to do it. You know, Odyssey in the Amazon, it was a chance for me to work, do a series at DC. Then the deal had taken me to lunch 3 times, and we're trying to find something to do. And, you know, he had this idea about the Odyssey because he loved, you know, the epic poem.
The Odyssey.
And so, so he wanted to do something about an Odyssey with the Amazons, and that's how that came about. So, you know, you just try to find a story. Sometimes you can, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. You know, some stories need more time, more real estate, you know, for you to tell them, you know. But that's just the way it is. You know, I remember I did 2 issues of Cyborg, and this is one of my disappointing stories. Only 2 issues left in the series. I got a call from the editor, and he wanted to know if I wanted to pitch for it. I said, sure. But I immediately came up with what I thought was going to be a cool little story to close out the series. And, you know, you had 2 black characters, 2 black armored characters who had never met before. And I said, why not have Cyborg hook up with Steel and they have an adventure together? And he says, no. He says, because that's too good of a story and we would want that to be bigger. I'm like, really? I mean, you have, you know, these books like World's Finest or DC Comics Presents or Brave and the Bold. You know, they could be 1 or 2 issue stories. You're in and you're out. Does it have to be this larger thing for these 2 characters? And so after that, I have to come up with go through or sift through all these bad ideas to come up with a Cyborg story. And, you know, I didn't like any of them.
And as you're even saying that, that's something when people review comics, they have no idea about that. So sometimes it isn't fair, you know, per se, to kind of go with, well, this should have been more, it could have been expanded upon, when you actually wanted to as well.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I feel now that what's happening in the comic book industry is that these stories are being prompted by the editors. They'll come up with a concept and they'll find a writer to execute the concept, you know, and a lot of times that concept is flawed. You know, I don't understand it. I don't understand a gala event, a big X-Men, you know, costume party. Now, you know, maybe it's sold, I don't know. But I don't understand that concept, you know.
I don't think you're the only one. I think there's a lot of people who are a little confused with that.
You know, especially if you're an older fan and you remember how quickly the new X-Men hit the ground running and didn't let up for years, you know. Like, I still, you know, you look at that X-Men run up until Byrne left, and I'm like, my goodness, they were just firing on all cylinders, you know. And I don't know why they can't do that again with a lot of these comics. I mean, at that time, you know, you had around that time, you know, within 3 years or whatever, you know, X-Men was on top, you know, Frank Miller on Daredevil, Doug Mitch and Bill Sienkiewicz on Moon Knight, Walt Simonson on Thor. You know, then John Byrne went to Fantastic Four. You know, there were so many of these cool books that you're like, my goodness. And then even DC started to come up, you know, with Paul Levitz on Legion of Superheroes, Marv Wolfman and George Perez on Teen Titans. You know, I mean, they knew what they were doing. And, you know, it was just a joy to be a comic book fan, you know, during that time. Now, I just don't see that.
So Kevin, how much do you think that's talent, and how much do you think that's people knowing their craft at a certain point? So are we talking about a John Byrne or a Dave Cockrum or Chris Claremont when they had those kind of breakout things, that they had put enough time in the industry to know how to do that? Because that's something that's been brought up about even having, when you had the newsstand, you had creators who had a big enough marketplace that they could find out fairly quickly what would work and what wouldn't work. They could do that on a regular basis. Whereas now, the point you were making earlier, when you're selling books to 5,000 people, can you really get a sense of what works in a larger marketplace or what's going to be successful?
Well, you know what, that's hard to say. You know, that really is, because I mean, a lot of people have talent. I think there are a lot of things at play now, though, you know, that may keep certain things from happening. One of the things I might say is that, you know, back in the day, you were talking about foundational creators who either work with or knew people like Stan Lee, Bob Kane, you know, what's the name of the guy who did Daredevil? Woods. Wally Woods. John Buscema. I mean, these guys were contemporaries, friends, and the comic book industry was still a place that was wildly creative without the same kind of, you know, political editorial interference. And these people actually loved the characters as they were. Like, if you look at, you know, like a lot of people complain that, you know, comic book fans never want the characters to change. And what they're doing now is, you know, basically making the characters more relevant. I'm like, no, I disagree. Comic book fans love change, but within certain parameters. Like if you look at Batman from when he was created until, let's say, 2010, of course there have been changes, but he always maintained that persona of being the Dark Knight, hating guns, Superman would never kill. They were morality plays. And then all of a sudden in 2010, everything changes. I think, the creators back then knew that. And so that's what they did. Even when John Byrne came and revamped Superman, he went back to the way Superman, what to me, really should be. Superman should not be all powerful because you can't keep that up. I remember when Denny O'Neil, he had the same issue with Superman that a lot of creators had, that he was too powerful. So he does a soft, revamp, in a way, taking a third of his powers away. But 13 issues later, he's back up to being all powerful again. And it's like, what are you going to do? But I also think now, the creators now, I think they understand how the industry works. They are not going to give their best ideas, knowing that their best ideas might become a movie and they're not going to get any money for it. And I'm not saying they phone it in, but I am saying they're careful, and they do what they can to keep the job, try to keep it entertaining to an extent, but they're not going to, really give us those great ideas because they know they won't get anything from them. And that's the way it seems like for me. And I wouldn't give my best ideas to Marvel and DC either. I would save those for myself because I know I can make money off of them later.
The problem is that if you're not doing it on mainstream big characters, your chances of success anywhere else, you might get more of that small pie.
Yes,
but you're not going to create a name or your stability. I don't know. It's weird because you're not making a lot of money at the big companies, supposedly.
Exactly.
But you need those big companies. You need to work there so that you can get a name. But then when you go somewhere else, or if you start somewhere else, your chances of making it are pretty slim unless you have some other avenue or shtick going on. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think as a writer, I can only speak to this as a writer, and I think other creators can look at it this way too. But my thing was, when I got in the industry, and I'm talking about the film industry, was how to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can't expect that meteoric success, and so my thing was to diversify my creative lexicon. So once I tried to be a screenwriter, it took me a long time to sell my first thing, which was Underworld. I had been out to California for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. But I did extra work. I started acting. I got national commercials. I got A-player roles. I started doing stunt work. And I started doing more acting, small roles, nothing starring or anything. But that's how I started to diversify. Did a couple of music videos too. Once Underworld hit, then I started saying, okay, what else can I do? I got chosen to do a couple of voiceovers for different cartoon series. So I did, I think the first one I got was the Batman. Then I did something on Avengers, Hulk Smash. I did that. Then I started, since I got into animation doing voiceovers, I talked to some of the producers, hey, what about my writing a couple of episodes? So I talked to Dwayne McDuffie. I met Dwayne McDuffie, and he gave me an episode of Ben 10. Since I did the voice on Black Beetle in what was it? Young Justice. I talked to Greg Weisman about writing an episode, and because he loved what I did with Odyssey of the Amazons, he let me write an episode of Young Justice. And I had met Joey Casey before in my travels, and the guys of Man of Action, the animation company. And so they knew that I had written an episode of Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That for a lot of political reasons, the show got canceled. So my episode never got made. So, but, because of that, I was able to do Mega Man, an episode of Mega Man, write an episode of Mega Man. So my thing is, you have to diversify in order to make money. So yeah, you're right. A lot of these comic book writers, they can have a hard time because you're not really making a lot of money at the big two anymore. I heard writing fees have gone down. That there are some writers who are only making $40 a page. And how can you survive on that? And please don't be married, or have a kid.
or only have a rich spouse.
yeah, exactly.
But truthfully, writers of fiction, literature, they've been pulling that stunt for a long time anyway.
yeah. True. But in this day and age, it's really difficult. I mean, how are you going to survive? I think the terminal end of your career as a writer is for your IP to become a movie, franchise, a TV show, or a video game, or an animated, cartoon. That's it. If not, it's going to be rough for you. It's going to be rough.
I need those T-shirt sales.
Yeah.
Kenneth says, Kevin, I've heard the same thing about Chicago pizza. I've been to Pizzeria Uno, the original place with the deep dish, but other people say the square thin crust was where it started.
Yeah, I would probably agree.
Goodness. Federico de la Casa. Hi, I like Mr. Grevious's Blue Marvel, real new and original black character. Why does Marvel not use heroes other than like black versions of their other heroes? They don't want the original heroes. They want like a black version,
like
of
Captain America being Sam Wilson and stuff like that.
I really don't like stuff like that. I don't like the whole race switching and gender bending of characters. I think if you want a black hero or a new female hero, create a new character. And if the character doesn't make it, well, you keep trying. Keep trying. But to take established characters and just put a black face on them, I don't like that at all. Now I will say this much. Business wise, I understand why that might happen. I mean, if you look at Batman and Superman back in the day, you had a kid version, a female version, an animal version, an evil version, a futuristic version. I get it. And I remember in the 70s, I don't know if you guys ever heard this story, but when they were doing the Incredible Hulk TV show, because, Marvel didn't do what DC did with the families. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They were doing the Incredible Hulk TV show. And one of the producers, I don't know if it was Kenneth Johnson or someone else, they told Stan Lee, they just like the $6 Million Man. If we wanted to, we can make a female version of the Hulk, and you would not own that character. Yeah. And there would be nothing you can do about it. And so Stan Lee was like, "You're kidding me." And he made a phone call to the Marvel offices and said, "Look, all the characters licensed. You are to make female versions of all of them, and here's why. And so if you remember the mid to late 70s, we got Miss Marvel, we got She-Hulk, we got Spider-Woman. They made Frankie Ray, the female Human Torch, who became Nova, you know, because they have licensed the Human Torch, you know, as a character, and that's what they did. That's what they did.
How could that guy should have lost his job for
I
all
know.
time telling Stanley that? Like, what were you doing? I mean, CBS should have been crazed.
Wait, so it wasn't inspired by the rise of feminism? It was just business?
What? Money drives everything.
Yeah.
You do get like some of the
It's always
original
money.
black heroes that are cool. Like if you go and read Luke Cage in the 80s and then you read Luke Cage now, it almost doesn't read like the same character. They like took all of his cool traits away from him.
Exactly. I mean, he's very mollified, you know, now. And I know,
he wasn't nearly as mollified as Black Lightning. When I started reading those original Isabella Black Lightnings, you talk about somebody getting mollified, he was neutered. It was terrible.
Yeah, the original Black Lightning was great. It was like the Morgan Freeman character that was the principal, except he was a superhero.
You're right.
It was great.
Exactly. That's right.
Like,
But what are you going to do?
Relate to it. Kenneth says, Gervain, Chicago is great. I'm writing a superhero comic that takes place there. It's such a fascinating history. Rep your city, man. Be proud. Gervain City is Manhattan. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Look, Manhattan is not a city, it's a borough. And even if I were to hail from Manhattan, it would be Harlem. But I am from the Bronx, the South Bronx in particular.
The Bronx.
Bronx.
Matt Gio wants to know, is there any news on a shipping date for the amazing Bass Reeves collected edition?
No. No. I don't know when it's coming out. You know, that whole thing has been kind of up in the air. So
there was an announcement, but then nothing was able to come out with it. It's comic books. Everything's always fluid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta wait for it. So you're good. Well, I'm sure there'll be a news article when we finally get a firm date on that one. Kenneth wants an art battle. Who's better, Graham Nolan or Mark Bagley? Bad. I mean, Mark Bagley is classic Spider-Man. You know, he's illustrated more Spider-Man comic books, but Graham Nolan's got the better work just with Nightfall.
Yeah, I like both of them.
They're both fantastic.
Kenneth Dally, that's a real people.
Being mean to us. Got to plant my flag. I'm going with Graham Nolan just because Nightfall is amazing, and he's done a lot of other great work. But you know, Mark Bagley's classic as well. Who are you on for, Yule?
Well, I hate Mark Bagley, so Graham Nolan.
Not hard for you.
Well, you know, the thing is like all of these guys, when you're doing monthly books, and I mean, both of them could churn that shit out, and probably Mark Bagley even better. If I was just going for that alone, I might say him. But when they get to do something that is from the heart, then we get to see what their stuff is maybe more like. And I think Graham Nolan has still given a little bit more in those instances. And I've never seen Mark Bagley be able to do, you know, a passion project or anything like that.
Well, he's got some Kickstarters and Indiegogos going out right
Mark
now.
Bagley does?
No, Graham Nolan.
No, I know. That's what I'm
Nolan
saying. Graham Nolan's doing a little bit more passion projects now, something a little bit more personal, whereas Bagley's still churning it out for Marvel,
Spider-Man.
you know. So it's kind of hard to like really pick one. I mean, if I ever saw Bagley's, you know, full on painted, you know, historical drama, whatever it has to be, we'll talk then. But Graham Nolan for me.
All right, Jim, who you going for?
I'm going Mark Bagley just because Yule hates him. That's my only reason. I like both, and I probably would go Graham Nolan, but I'll go Mark Bagley just to go against Yule. Yeah.
That's good.
All right, Doc. You are the Marvel shill. Are you going Bagley? Doc has apparently gone. He must be choking down a heater. Gervain, you're the last. You're the final voice. Which one do you got?
Honestly, I go Bagley, but that's because I just thought his new Warriors work was just
something else at that time.
Mhm.
I think Bagley, I hate to say this, I think he got worse as he went along, but I think if you took his New Warriors work and you put it up against anything with Graham Nolan, I think he was operating at a different level than some of his later stuff.
You know, his Magneto that's coming out right now has a little bit more. It feels like he's kind of trying to channel Art Adams a little bit.
It
Yeah.
does.
So there's a little bit more
Yeah.
texture there. I would check that out if you are. Oh wait, maybe that's Todd Knock. I can't remember now.
Todd Knock.
I think it's Todd Knock.
It
I
is.
Well,
love
never
Todd
mind.
Knock.
And I
then.
think the other thing about
Thankfully.
Bagley is that the look of his work in terms of how well it goes, it really does depend on the inker more than it does with Graham
Mhm.
Nolan. I think
Mhm.
Graham Nolan would be good regardless, but Bagley, he really does need a good inker.
I agree.
Joe Herb says Blue Marvel is one of my favorite characters of all time. It's a pity Marvel doesn't utilize it more.
Customer Joe Herb, I'll have you know.
Yeah. You know, I pitched several Blue Marvel series or several projects of Marvel, but, you know, I might not hear anything, and then they'll give it to somebody else.
Mm.
Oh, and it's like, oh, look at that. Like, I pitched a Black Avengers project, but I called it Avengers Black Ops. And I had a cool little twist. And, you know, they said, well, you know, we're not really sure, blah, blah, blah. And then they give Al Ewing, you know,
Mighty
Mighty
Avengers.
Avengers.
the Mighty Avengers. And I'm like, okay. Then I had this pitch with Blue Marvel that he would go around the universe exploring super science. And, you know, they come out with the Ultimates with
Uh-huh.
that, kind of that thing. And I'm like, and then and when that happened, I immediately thought of something that John Byrne said. He didn't like to really pitch because he's seen too many of his ideas, you know, and some other Marvel writers have told me that is par for the course.
No.
You know, you really have to be in with those guys on an editorial level if that's not going to happen. I mean, the industry really is incestuous, and it's just like any other industry, really. And it's just that you didn't expect that to come from comic book guys, but you know, you could be wrong.
Huh.
G.O.D.S says, when I first started watching the channel, one of you said, I believe it was Doc, a comic book is an action movie with unlimited budget. There's no way Doc said anything that smart. That was definitely me.
That was definitely me.
Well, we might have echoed the same sentiments, but I was right.
Yeah.
Doc was
I mean,
correct.
that's true. You know, if you're allowed to do that, you know.
Yeah,
if you're
that's the
allowed to
wonderful
do
thing about comic books. The only limit is your imagination. You don't have to worry about the budget.
Yeah,
And-
exactly.
And how much you want to piss off the artist
Oh, yeah.
from making him draw
Paying good rate.
double page splashes with 400 alien spaceships and all kinds of other crazy shit. They're like, it's gonna take me 3 weeks to draw this fucking page.
He also says MCU Captain America is definitely superhuman. Any man that can stop a helicopter from lifting off with his arm is not peak human.
Exactly. And
I
you
feel
know,
like
I
Arnold
think
probably could have in Commando, maybe.
Right?
very true.
Definitely. Doc says, don't tell Kevin how dirty they did Nefaria in Charlie Jane Andrews' X-Men book.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that one.
You don't want to read that
You
one.
No,
really
don't.
don't.
Really.
Yeah, it was. Was it New Mutants?
Yes.
Yeah,
Legion.
Lethal Legion. Oh yeah, that was.
Oh wow.
If you like Count Nefaria, I'm gonna just warn you now. Stay the hell away from that comic.
Wow.
Go back and read Avengers again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
the best way to do it. Blue Marvel wants to know, what does Kevin think of Al Ewing's portrayal of Blue Marvel in the Ultimates?
I read, I think, the first issue. Generally speaking, from what I've read of his work, I did not hate what he did. I did not want Blue Marvel to have too much of an array of all these powers. You know what I'm saying? Yes, he was a genius, science, because I was a scientist. He played football because I played football. You know what I'm saying? So I just ratcheted up what I already did and, put that into the Blue Marvel. But I think once he started getting into the vision powers, and all that, I'm like, that's too much. I think it's too much. But hey, what are you gonna do? That once you create a character and they become part of that universe, well,
They're not really yours anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's just the way. That's just the way it happens.
Piece of yourself away, or your baby.
Yeah,
away.
yeah. And that's why I would say, it was a dream come true on one hand because in part I created the character as a kid. So to see the character in an actual Marvel comic book is pretty cool. But then you realize too that other people have a chance to do whatever they want with the character, and if they don't let you back on the character, then you're at their mercy, and that's just the way it goes.
Wraith X7 says Marvel and DC need to do a semi-reboot where they retcon various past stories, regardless of their popularity or critical acclaim, without a convoluted in-story explanation, and just move forward.
They would do. I mean, it would be convoluted, and
they've done that before.
When they did Ultimate Spider-Man, they made everything like this crazy, insidious plot, and even when they did Miles Morales, they, Bendis worked off of that also. I think it would be even more, now we have to work the Court of Owls into this new history along with Joker, and Batman saw something when he was a little kid, and that's got to play out, and it's going to add a little extra, and I don't know if that's true.
Batman's parents were actually taking him to an orphanage when they got shot. He wasn't going to be an heir to the money.
I would recommend writing a Bible for your universe and go from there. Mm-hmm. But if you're not going to do it, then just keep shit the same.
It's kind of weird, especially DC. Every once in a while, they realize they've gone so far off the reservation that they try a course correction with the Crisis Event where you kind of reset everything. That's kind of like it was, but it's not like it was, and try to move forward from there. But I don't know. It seems like it's less and less time before they need to reset again.
No, but there's a great example of that with the Batman series. I always recommend to people Batman New Adventures. I think it was Max Allan Collins was writing at the time, where they did just that. They just started it over. It wasn't big fanfare. It wasn't this big explanation. It was like Jason Todd was like ripping off the jack in the Batmobile's wheels, and that's how he first met Batman. And they just simply started it over.
But no new number one. They just
no number one.
They just did it. And I mean, those are. I was kind of talking to somebody yesterday about the lack of people that come into the comic store like it used to be. And I feel like the renumbering and the restructuring so anybody could get in and then read a story makes it so it's less likely that you care about some issue number 237, 238, that type of stuff.
Every single jumping on point is at least 3 readers jumping off point.
Well, I mean, it's always been that way. I dropped off when Mark Millar was writing Fantastic Four. I had done my time, so I was off for that. And maybe I got back on when, I don't know, Dan Slott started over. You know what I mean? Everybody takes breaks from some things. It's not only because a creator comes on, but also just because it is that jumping off point.
Generally speaking, though, you slap a new number one on it, people start reevaluating their purchasing.
For sure, for sure.
If it's Batman, it was Batman 408 when they did that. I definitely recommend that to people. Yep.
Yeah.
MD, thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you got a question, definitely put it in there and we'll try and get to it. But I really appreciate that. HH from Sigma Comics says, agreed, Mr. Grevioux. Holding back is whack. But like Mr. Kane said, you can't half-step comics, and that's what's happening today. Tell him, Javade.
Yeah. I mean, like Kevin was saying earlier, it's like, what's the incentive? What's the incentive for anybody to go in and give like 110% in comics when and Kevin and I have talked about this, when even as early as the late 60s, early 70s, when they started doing that Marvel Comics TV show, and those creators started realizing what the potential was for money to be made and with their creations and how much of it they wouldn't get. Why would you, step, all the way in and give your best effort? But yeah, you can. We talk about was it Hickman with the whole House of X powers of X. But really, he just kind of, and I'm not knocking it because I still loved it. He really just reskinned the time traveler's wife. That's what he did. He did it brilliantly, but that's what he did. But in terms of anybody, it almost would be against your own best interest to give any of these now corporations, because they ain't just
Original
comic companies
ideas.
anymore.
You just take old ideas they've already done and
exactly, and just do that the best you can and hope nobody notices. But yeah, can't have stuff.
Well, DC's got to have some, like, there was that statement quite a few years ago where Sean Gordon Murphy said, Marvel can't afford me. So in my mind, every time he goes back and does something for DC, it's because he's making more money there than at Marvel. So there's a certain amount, there's a level, and he's achieving that and more. So there is some money being paid to some people. I assume a James Tynion's probably doing good because he was throwing out all sorts of stuff for them, But Marvel, it doesn't seem like they give a shit about that.
Well, that's
Even if you're Jim Starlin.
Yeah, that was Perlmutter, so there's no two ways about that.
Well, Disney is supposedly notorious for paying crummy. So,
Raytech7 wants to know, Kevin, how many kids did you intend for Adam to have, and did you have any hand in creating his children that were later introduced by other writers?
I created 3 Hickman with 3 kids, Kevin, Adrian, and Max. And I had stories for them. In fact, I wrote one, but it was rejected. It was in a short, but the short was rejected because they wanted the focus to be on something else. And so I took the kids out, and then Al Ewing, he picked up on some things I was working on or that I had pitched, and then he did them, Not saying that he stole my ideas per se, but, yeah.
And he borrowed them without asking.
Yeah, but, I guess you don't have to. I mean, not with all writers. Like, I remember you had to ask to use certain characters at Marvel at one point. And that was a big ball of contention because if you can't share the characters, a lot of times your stories don't have any legs because the characters you want to use to bring that story to fruition are available. Like I did a Blue Marvel story where he fought King Hyperion. Well, that was supposed to be Nefaria. And I was told, well, you can't use him. And then a year and a half later, Bendis is using him. And I'm like, okay, that's why they wouldn't let me do it, So that's just the way it goes, but understand it's corporate comics.
Yeah.
And, when you're doing corporate comics, that's the way it works. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, that's what I heard about Claremont creating Jubilee and Gambit because he was tired of asking permission to do things with Dazzler and Longshot.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. And the impetus for my bringing the Blue Marvel over to Marvel is because I wanted a place to go. I was doing the New Warriors. I was going to introduce him into the New Warriors, but I had a conflict with the editor because of the way I was going to do it. It was like, no, you have to use this character and someone else is in control of that character, so you can't use that character and blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, there were a lot of avenues that were closed to me. And so I figured, okay, I bring the Blue Marvel over here. Now I have a place to go. And surprise, surprise, even that didn't work. And I'm like, okay, so I know what this is.
Tommy Review says, Kevin, what are your thoughts on Punisher? Also, Underworld has been one of my favorites. Paul W.S. Anderson wishes his Resident Evil movies were as good as Underworld. Hey.
Okay. I like the Punisher. I like the old Punisher, though. You know, the old Punisher that, you know, he had it was a warped sense of justice, but, you know, he wasn't a maniac either. You know what I'm saying? I think one of the quintessential Punisher moments was when Frank Miller was writing an issue with Daredevil. And there was this cop who had a bead on him. And the Punisher could have taken him out. But he was like, this kid is scared. You know, I'm not out here to kill cops. And he's like, it's okay, son. You know, and puts up his gun and lets them take him to jail. I'm like, so that old school Punisher was cool. But, you know, I haven't read the Punisher in quite some time, and I'm quite sure he's changed significantly since yeah.
They're replacing him.
That aspect. Oh, that's ridiculous. There is no reason to replace. See, you know, it's really funny because, you know, Marvel is doing a lot of things that DC did back in the day, things that we never thought Marvel would do. And there was no reason for them to do it. You don't need to replace characters like DC did back in the, 50s and 60s. You don't need to do that. You know, create a new character. But, you know, these are more gimmicks that they use to increase sales.
Yeah,
and,
you know he's coming back.
Yeah. But the sad thing, the gimmicks work to give them that money boost, you know. So everyone will buy that #1 issue with the new blonde-haired Punisher, you know, his new origin or whatever. And they'll make money, you know, and that's what it's all about now.
Kenneth says, original black superheroes, 100% agree.
Yeah.
It's definitely
yeah. But the thing is, you know, who's going to create those characters? If you do, are you going to get a sweet deal? The answer is no. or it depends on who you are. And, you know, if you can, I say keep that character for yourself. Keep that character for yourself.
Lane is making fun. Final countdown to the Doc review of Power Girl #1. I think that's probably next week, Doc. I'm sorry, buddy. At least we got Fire and Ice this week.
That's not an improvement.
Shame how modern writers and editors have done Nubia dirty. Nubia existed since the 70s, but they made her great at everything with no flaws and nothing real about her book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was a bad time for Wonder Woman just in general. But Common Sense is an enormous Nubia fan. I think he's the guy that does the Nubia like fanfic stuff, right? Maybe that was Callum that was doing the Nubia stuff. It was one of the two. But I don't know. Are you a big fan of Nubia, Kevin?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
There you go.
And you know what? I like Wonder Woman, but I haven't always bought her book. You know, I think the first time I bought Wonder Woman was when Gene Colan, you know, was on the book for a time. And then after that, when George Perez did it, I liked, what's his name? Phil Jimenez's work.
Mm-hmm.
And John Byrne, you know. So I've had those times I bought the book, but that's it. But, you know, Nubia just seems like an angry black woman to me. You know.
Not really anymore. Not very angry. But she got everything she wanted. Kenneth he's got a black superhero fight for this one. Blue Marvel versus Icon. Gervais, I'm going to let you decide this one. Who do you got, Blue Marvel or Icon? I know you used to be an intern at Milestone, and then we've also got the creator of Blue Marvel here. There's no pressure on you, Gervais.
I know. Y'all making these after hours conversations hard now. The only reason I would give it to Blue Marvel is because of the scientist piece. I think he would outthink Icon. That's why I would give it. Oh, even toe to toe. Ooh, that's tough. Toe to toe. You know, the thing is, I still would have to give it to Blue Marvel. Like, I know a lot of people say that Icon is like, I know he's super milestone Superman, but I've just never seen Icon as someone like, now going strength wise. I never got the sense that he was that powerful strength wise. You know, like pound for pound.
He had a similar power set, but maybe he wasn't powered up that high.
Exactly. He had a similar power set. So I'm gonna give it to Blue Marvel. I'm not doing that because Alpha Wolf is here. I'm just saying. I'll give it to him for the scientist piece.
Do you agree with that, Kevin?
Yeah. I think Blue Marvel brutalizes Icon.
Well, there you go. It's not even close.
Yeah. You know, I mean, when I look at Icon, you know, what was he? He was a regular alien, was flying on like a space bus. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That crash lands on Earth or something like that. And I don't know where he got those superpowers from. But you know, I just never understood the character. I bought the character when it first came
I don't
out.
like new Icon, but I like the old Icon.
No, new Icon. But now, if it was a political debate, Icon would hand Blue Marvel his, you know what? So I'll give him.
Yeah, you just talked to the UN or whatever with the rocket. Oh,
there you go.
That's not funny. There you go, Kenneth, from the voices of the creator himself. RateX7 says, as an African American, it ticks me off that Marvel and DC don't use any of their lesser known and less popular black heroes, except when they might need a character to be killed off or made.
Looking at you, Bendis.
You know what?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. A lot of characters, just because of the natural flow of creativity, get lost. You know, I mean, you know, look at Omega the Unknown. You know, here I thought when I was a kid, and he didn't do much, but you know, he had that series, didn't last very long, and then he just disappeared. You know, and wasn't seen for almost 40 years, you know, 30 years, something like that. You know, I know they killed off Thunderbolt. I thought he would have been something, a cool character. Black Goliath was killed off, but you know what? You know,
Someone had to die.
Yeah.
Mercy killing.
I was talking to Dan Slott. I was talking to Dan Slott once, and one of the things he mentioned is that, you know, PIM particles are dangerous. That's not true. But you know, but I never really liked Black Goliath all that much. You know, I think what a lot of characters need is for someone who loves them to, you know, be given the character and do something cool with it. Like one of the I'm going to call it a travesty, okay? But what do I know? I think one of the travesties that has been created against a character in the last few years is what they did with the Falcon. You know, making Captain America was ridiculous. My thing is that why not just make the Falcon cool? Well, the problem is they won't let people make the Falcon cool. You know, they won't give him, you know, the kind of cast that he needs, the kind of modus operandi or surrounding concept that makes him a cool character. He doesn't need to be put in Captain America's, you know, costume and given his shield in order for him to become cool and relevant. I don't see that at all. Why not just make the Falcon someone we can cheer for? You know, but they don't think like that. It's, like I said, it's very, very, very corporate. Very corporate. You know, Captain America had a hit movie. Hey, let's put the Falcon in his costume.
Nerd wants to know, what are your views on the new Warriors? Is that salvageable? I imagine he's talking about Snowflake and Safe Space.
Oh,
yeah. I don't even get into stuff like that. I mean,
Good.
if you want my opinion, and this is what I don't understand about comic books, if it works, why try to fix it or why change it? So if you look at what Fabian Nicieza did with the original New Warriors,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like, why would you end that book or why would you break up that team? No, you know, that's a good book, a good team. Keep that together. But then you want to do different iterations, and now the concept falls flat and it's no longer interesting. You know, why that happens, I have no idea.
Well, actually, we do. It was because the writer said he was scared of Night Thrasher. He was intimidated by a character. So that's a sign that you have the wrong fucking writer. But yeah, so that's maybe a little why.
Kenneth says he picks Icon because he's as powerful as Superman, but the comics say so. Another fight: John Stewart, Green Lantern versus War Machine Rhodey. John Stewart would destroy him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rhodey doesn't have superpowers; he's just got armor. He'd just pierce it with his green bullets.
Exactly.
And he didn't even build the armor. It's like armor from somebody else.
Exactly. That's what I never understood either. You know, unless they upgrade Rhodey into being some kind of engineer tinkerer, you know, it's like if it breaks, he can't fix it. Now, I'm going to say this, and it didn't work, but I thought it was a step in the right direction. I kind of liked when Rhodey was given that alien armor. You know, I didn't like the design, but, you know, it was a good effort to get him out of being a second-rate Iron Man. You know what I'm saying? Or a black Iron Man. But, you know, it didn't take, so they dropped it. You know,
there was a period where he was kind of almost like Marvel Cyborg, too, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think I remember something like that, but it didn't last long.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. That was.
Let's not forget, Rhodey did put X-Force on the back foot. Let's just remember that.
Dude, I love that one. That was cool. Yeah.
Very nice. Frank Zanka says, "Happy Saturday, guys. Hi, Kevin. I'm a big fan of Underworld. I tried to get the rights to make a board game and card game a few years ago, but they weren't doing anything with the IP at the time."
Yeah. You know, once again, you know, when these corporate entities get a hold of something, they do things according to whatever their modus operandi is, and what they think they can get out of it. If they don't think it's going to have any legs, they're like, no, we're not going to do it. You know, that's just the way it goes. You know, just the way it goes.
Frank has a lot in common with you. He's also a screenwriter, a comic book writer, but he also makes board games and card games as well.
An RPG of that would be really cool. You know, I could see the stats and everything. You know, it'd be pretty simple.
Plus, you get the card with Kate Beckinsale in the pants.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm sure she. Yeah, exactly.
Every man in the world thanks you for that. I don't know if that was your original idea, Kevin, but you inspired it. Kenneth Dally says, in Superman the Animated Series, they modeled it after John Byrne comics to where Supes was powerful but not godly powerful. Plus, they used more of his villains.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, to this day, I think John Byrne did the Ultimate Superman. I really, really enjoyed his run. It's just sad that it didn't last long.
Yeah, he did. But yeah, he kind of reinvented the character, but then he kind of got devolved when Jeff Johns got on him. He decided to make him Silver Age Superman again.
Yeah.
Golden Age Superman kind of guy. But yeah, we had Mark Millar on the channel. He's more of a Cary Bates Superman guy than the John Byrne.
Oh, really? Yeah.
A little disagree. Well, I didn't actually disagree with him on the channel because he's Mark Millar. I just let him get his words out there. But on the back of my mind, I was like, that's not how I see Superman.
I think partially it's also, you know, obviously when we grow up, when we like something, he liked Kurt Swan Superman also, and he was doing it for like 100 years.
Yeah.
Everybody, you pick up a Superman and it's a Kurt Swan one, and if it's not that, it's Kurt Schaffenberger or something like that. And it all looks the same, which is good, but bad. Yeah.
Raytech7 says, when I say retcon past stories, I mean get retcon and ignore many of the stories that came out in the last 20, 30 years. Man, that's so difficult to do.
I understand. Oh, well, that too. Yeah, I mean, are we ever going to be able to put that
Like, what's the point in time that you pick? You're like, all right, December 14th, 1987 is the date that we're going to pretend nothing happened.
The answer is 3 months before the first Civil War. Because
no, it's not.
It doesn't matter.
It's before Crisis on Infinite Earths, so we're talking 1984 easy.
He's talking Marvel.
Marvel. Well, it's all of the universes.
Well,
Secret Wars. That's it. Done.
Why would you?
No, you know what? I'm thinking about it, but I think I'm going to agree with Doc there.
Ha!
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a $20 tier.
Yeah. But you know what? But seriously, like I've thought often, what if, because of this culture war and the problems we've seen with these books, if someone at Marvel did say, you know what, we're going to separate the lines. We're going to have classic Marvel and new Marvel and see which one sells better. And if you're going to do a classic Marvel, that is around the area that I would pick. All that stuff right before Civil War on back, that would be classic Marvel, because I think the characters were pretty much, maybe.
So Tony Stark wasn't like the asshole he became.
Exactly.
Have that fight with Cap.
Maybe I would even pick right before Heroes Reborn, that whole thing.
That was some rough Marvel right before that, though.
Yeah. Well, I did not like the Teenage Tony Stark.
Teenage Tony Stark's a really good example.
I think starting over on Ron Garney, like Mark Waid, Captain America, isn't the worst place to restart.
Yeah, well, I think I like that. I like that book. But, I think you can get in there and pick some things and say, okay, this is classic Marvel. Let's go to the classic storytelling and the way the characters were supposed to be depicted. And new Marvel, you can do whatever you want, and let's see who wins. Yeah, and I think classic Marvel would blow them away.
I feel like Civil War was what kind of fundamentally altered. Now, whether it's a good story or not is a wholly other thing. I feel like it fundamentally altered the way that Marvel does storytelling, the way that they run a publishing line.
Yes.
All right. We've got like 9 more super chats, and we're kind of at the end of the show. So let's see if we can get through these rapid fire. Everybody wants to hear from Kevin. Common Sense wants to know who you got, Signal versus Night Thrasher.
Night Thrasher.
Amen.
It wasn't even close. Jose the Beast, good morning from Clovis, California. Hope everyone is great. We are doing great. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Kenneth says, Kevin, I too don't like overpowered characters. Spider-Man next to Batman is one of my favorite characters of all time. He has great powers, but with clear limitation. He has villains that push him in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This is probably going to get me in trouble. I hate Spider-Man.
There you go, man. There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But the reason
he's trying to play it off now.
What? So you said no Mary Jane. You don't care one way or the other.
I don't care at all.
Kevin waits till the end of the show to just drop a nuke.
Well, I was going to invite him on my show sometime.
Okay, but you know what it is.
I know the better Grevioux.
Spider-Man is one of those characters that he's become. I don't know, man, like the flagship character who always wins, he's always, and when I mean win, I'm talking about against other characters. I don't know. I just never really took to him. Now I do wish when I was a kid, I got his issues I guess 30 through 100. But I only got a smattering of Spider-Man issues. But I just never really took to him for whatever reason. I mean,
I can help you out, Kevin. If you took Charlie Brown from Peanuts, that's Spider-Man.
Okay, but you know what though? What they did with him is that he became a guy with a bad luck streak, not your just regular guy, and that's not what Stan Lee's intent was, and that's what they did. And I mean, and here's the thing, Marvel has given me four Spider-Man stories to write, and I had a good time with them, but I think he's too strong. I don't know. I've just never taken to the character. And when he beat Firelord, I looked at that book and I'm like, you know what? This is stupid. And to
Kenneth Dally is literally shaking on his couch right now.
That's like in the 280s.
He thought he found a kindred spirit. Nope.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And he beat Firelord because he tapped into that hidden superpower we didn't know he had, which was sheer desperation. That's
whatever the case.
Tommy Reviews wants to know, Kevin, would you ever work for the Rippaverse or Eric July?
I mean, I have no problem with the Rippaverse. I think Eric July did a tremendous job. This is a cat who put his money where his mouth is, and look at what he did. So, if I were to say anything about Eric July, it would be this. He did his thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jose the Beast. Kevin, who are your top DC characters that you liked? Are there any current DC comics you're reading today?
I am not reading any DC comics now. My first favorite, of course, was Superman. Absolutely. And then he did something that was so ridiculous it made me swear off DC Comics until 1980.
Is it when he tried to hook up with his cousin?
Make a porno.
No, you know what it was, man? There was a book that I read that he had to, Clark Kent had to interview Superman. So what he did is he moved back and forth between being Superman and Clark Kent so fast that no one could see him. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, even at 12, even at 12 years old, I said, this is too kiddie for me.
Man.
And I just
said,
sheer
velocity would just blow papers into the sky. You would see it.
Yeah, I just said, that's it. I'm not interested in DC anymore. But it wasn't until that mass exodus from Marvel that DC got better,
When he was leaving Shooter, even though he was the great editor.
Yeah.
Kenneth says, in a canon, DC Comics icon punched Superman, and Soup said, I don't think I've ever been hit that hard. That's from the comics, guys. Yeah, but Superman's also really nice. He could have been just like pretending.
Dwayne Duffy told me that they actually had a fight, and that Icon whooped his behind, but we never got a chance to see it. So, so who knows? Who knows? And then when they did fight in that book from the 90s, they seemed to be people, but I don't know.
He's probably been hyping up his own stuff. Kenneth says, War Machine's armor has stood up to Captain Marvel and other cosmic characters. I think Stewart can win too. Just say it.
All right. Only for so much time, I mean, didn't Thanos punch him in the chest and he died basically?
He got one-hitted.
He got one-hitted. I mean, it's Thanos, but if Thanos can do it, then I think Green Lantern can think of something pretty tough too.
Yeah, you can just give him the pimp hand. You know what I mean?
What the thing is, Green Lantern can just create his own War Machine.
Exactly.
Armor,
exactly.
And call it a day.
He'll just do a construct and sit down with a Mai Tai while he's doing that,
Exactly.
It says Mark Millar and Quentin Tarantino see Superman the same way. Apparently, if you remember Kill Bill Volume 2, I definitely noticed that as well. And while I like Quentin Tarantino, I remember that line in Kill Bill Volume 2 and thinking, that is not Superman.
Mhm.
Where he's hiding because he thinks we're pathetic.
I don't know. Yeah.
I haven't watched Kill Bill in a long time. I don't remember
It's a
that.
pretty key line, man. Daniel Beatty, Kevin, I'm working on writing and drawing a graphic novel. Any advice for new creators?
Too broad of a question.
Keep writing and drawing.
Stick with it.
It's too broad of a question. Get specific. I can
You need to know what
answer.
your goals are. What do you want to do? You want to go to Marvel, DC?
Do
Yeah.
10-page increments.
Um,
So
Yeah.
if you get tired of it, it's done.
I would
Right.
I would suggest my suggestion. Write them in order.
Oh, that's a good
Good.
one. Don't
Because
only draw the splash.
State out
page.
your goals, and once you figure out what you want to do, go find out how you achieve that, and then move towards it.
Do it in
that's
Start
English.
with an 8-page story and go to a 22-page story, and then go, and then you'll have a graphic novel eventually.
Write it
Sorry
in
about to
English.
disappoint you, Daniel. Kenneth says, I got Night Thrasher beating the Signal. I feel Marvel should have done more with him. He's a good street level character with lots of potential.
Yep.
DC should bring back Bloodwind. Yes, Gervais, I'm talking to you, buddy. They just did bring back
They
Bloodwind
just did bring him
in
back.
the
yeah.
Action Comics Doomsday Special. It is actually a good comic book.
Yeah.
New version,
Wait.
but yeah.
Bloodwind, isn't that just Martian Manhunter?
Thank you, Yul. Thank
It's
you.
a new
Thank
character with a connection to
Thank you
him.
very
They
much.
tried to get a connection
A
with him.
connection to Martian Manhunter or
Yeah.
Bloodwind?
Yeah, with Martian Manhunter. It's through that
Oh.
Lazarus Rain nonsense.
Is this
Yep.
just the
Shall we read?
girl Martian Manhunter?
you. It's just Martian Manhunter.
It's just
Great
Martian
swap.
Manhunter. I like. Wait. I'm so confused. When he pretends to be human, is a black man also. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So when he's like his alternate superhero, he's a black man too, right? Martian Manhunter confuses me, except for eating Oreos. I understand that.
Kenneth's final chat, he says, so Kevin, regarding that Spider-Man comment, we all have a right to our opinions, and you were one of my favorite guests. Just kidding.
Yeah,
What are you guys kidding about?
I apologize.
That
But
was
you
the
know what?
hottest take we've ever had on the channel.
But you know what? I did do a pretty cool Spider-Man story. It was a short. It was called "What Would Spider-Man Do?" And it was in I think Spider-Man 700.5. Yeah, 700.5. That I thought was pretty cool, and I got a lot of accolades for that. So I can still write them. It's just that
Even if you don't appreciate him.
yeah. So
Well, that's a thing about not wanting to give people assignments on characters that they actually like. Like even Eric Larson wanted to do Hulk forever and was never really given that.
That's
yeah.
why he did, Savage Dragon.
Yeah. So sometimes writing stuff you don't like is a good thing, possibly.
Yeah. I think if they allow you to speak with your voice as long as it is authentic to the character,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fine. But some of these companies have this this attitude that if a writer loves the character, then you should keep them far away from it. And I've never understood that logic.
I sort of do, because Jason Aaron ruined Wolverine and he was a massive Wolverine fanboy.
Sometimes getting your favorite
Fundamentally
sports
broken.
athlete,
Yeah.
your favorite athlete coming home to your sports team and then they suck. It's like sometimes that's the worst thing that can happen for them.
Yeah.
It might be that.
Definitely want to give a big shout out to Kevin for showing up here, talking geek with us for well over 2 hours now. We're to the comic book recommendation portion, but there is a link in the video description to Kevin's homepage for Darkstorm Comics. There is going to be a Kickstarter for Gentara. In the next few days, it kicks off on September 12th. Is there anything else people need to know about? And what should they be reading that you got right now?
Right now, the book I have out is, well, I guess Bass Reeves. But there is something out there, well, that I've done that I can't mention because of the strike.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Can I mention it?
Makes it difficult.
By all means.
Oh, and that's my man's work, King of Killers. If you haven't seen it yet, you need to check it out. He's doing his thing.
Where can they find that, Gervais?
They can find it. It's a film now, so they can find that on. I think if you go on to Vudu, it's on demand. It's out from Lionsgate. I don't know. I don't really go into the stores to buy movies anymore, but definitely if you go to any of the streaming sites, you can find it on demand. I know it's definitely on Vudu if you want to check it out.
Very nice.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed your time here. We are going to talk about some comic book recommendations. Do you have a comic book you want to recommend to people?
What do I like? Outright. Well, the last book that I really enjoyed was an independent book by Walt Simonson called Ragnarok.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's 3 volumes now.
He has gotten better over the years, But I love that book. I love that book.
Definitely one of the best things IDW's put out in quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
Gervais, are you reading comics? You got any recommendations?
Yeah, I'm reading comics, but few of these days. But definitely, for me, it's Masters of the Universe: Forge of Destiny. Shazam 3, I'm still enjoying that with Wade and Mora. And then and I also always like when Marvel does the legacy stuff, so it's appropriate for this one, Silver Surfer Rebirth Legacy 1. Ron Lim is one of my favorite artists, and I've always liked him on Silver Surfer, so I'm glad they're dropping another one. So those are my 3 this week.
Very nice. You got anything else coming out that people need to know about, Gervais, or should they just keep an eye out for animated concepts?
Just keep an eye out for animated concepts. Yep. That'll do.
Keta says, okay, here's context. Oh, whoops. Bloodwind and Martian Manhunter are separate characters. Bloodwind was trapped in another dimension. To get out, he needed to possess Martian Manhunter and take his body for a time. Martian Manhunter was later freed. That's not convoluted at all.
No, I had no idea. I didn't read any of that. Damn.
Yes, because I stopped after I found out he was Martian Manhunter. But anyway.
That's what I did too. There might have been an art change also, which is always a good dropping off point, Doc.
Nerd says floppies or graphic novels are the way to save comics. Do you think crowdfunding should come up with a floppy strategy or stick with graphic novels?
You know what?
Right.
You know what? I wouldn't mind if they abandoned the monthly floppy and they just went with doing 1 or 2 OGNs each year for their characters. I think one of the other things that's killing them is that there are too many books out there, and if I were in charge of Marvel, let's say Marvel has 80 books, I cut that in half, maybe even a little less than that, and make it so that you could, get the whole line if they were affordable. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, the monthly thing I no longer like. It's also hard to tell stories that way. I think you get more bang for your buck if it's an OGN.
It's interesting. The newer reader, the next generation of readers, aren't used to floppies either. They're used to reading graphic novels.
Yeah,
that's the format that they've accustomed themselves to. So it's definitely an interesting conundrum that the industry is going to have to deal with sooner than later. Keta says, great show, guys. Kevin, great having you, sir. Spider-Man notwithstanding, have a great one, fellas. Well, you have a good weekend. I'm glad you enjoyed your breakfast and had some fun geek commentary with this, Keta. All right, Jim, you got any recommendations?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend Peacemaker Tries Hard #5 at DC, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about. But if you like the humor of the TV show, it really nails that. And it's got, a lot of dirty words in it, so it makes me giggle. But also The Sacrificers #2 would be another recommendation.
That is definitely a recommend. Jewel, you are the man behind Fantastic Comics. You've also got a YouTube channel. Are there any comic books or videos that you want to recommend?
Yeah, actually, I've been making a couple videos so that I could get viewership up. And recently I did one on Ultimate Invasion. I clipped a Perch video. and we talked about that a little bit also. But I thought Ultimate Invasion 3 was kind of cool. That came out a week ago. So did Hunger in the Dust #2. G. Willow Wilson and Chris Wildgoose did a fantasy story. It's 2 issues in and I'm hooked. And then Amazing Spider-Man 33, 4 out of 5 issues have been good recently for that series. It's got Gleason on artwork, and they're obviously doing a whole Kraven the Hunter thing. Spider-Man's got all of Norman Osborn's bad mojo in him, and they're doing some really cool stuff, black suit and all that. And then lastly, this Tuesday at 8 live, you can watch it afterwards, I'm going to be interviewing, Kevin mentioned, Joe Casey. And we're going to talk about his new series that are going to be coming out and all sorts of other silly stuff.
Very nice. Definitely don't miss out on that. Kevin Kenneth says you need to read Roger Stern's Spider-Man run. It could change your mind.
Well,
Okay.
We'll put it on the to-do list. Finally, Doc, do you have any comic book recommendations?
I do. All right. So since we're already apparently on this bandwagon, there we go. Wolverine and Cable, Blood and Guts, written by Joe Casey with art by Stephen Platt. So it gives you a little bit of both, the best of both worlds. Joe Casey is a great writer. Stephen Platt's ridiculous, just totally balls to the wall, energetic art. So that one, we're going to go with X-Men number 6. I think this is 6. Yeah, 6. Namor is revealed to be a mutant, and the first mutant. So go try to find a
Miss Marvel of his time.
I know, right? Exactly.
Oh wow.
He was an Inhuman too.
Yep. Yeah, and he'll be something else too. And he'll be a man of 3 worlds.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna go with an obscure variant too. The Liefeld variant for Uncanny X-Force number 1. This is the
That's
Rick
very
Remender
cool.
era.
Perfect.
The series was dope, and this cover.
Is that the
cover's
first? That's him the first time he did Deadpool that style too, right?
great.
I
Yeah,
mean,
in the black and white costume. Yeah. So, yeah, this is it's really good. It's a weird, obscure variant to find, but go find it. And then finally, because I love torturing Yule with a slabbed book every week.
9.2.
9.2 X-Men 101, first appearance of Jean. No, this is not the reprints. Go.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great book. The start of really digging into where they'd spend the next 4 years
Yeah.
storytelling for
Oh, that was
X-Men. Yeah. So go check it out. Go find a copy.
Very nice. I do appreciate that. I want to say thank you very much to everybody for joining us on your Saturday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Big thank you to Kevin and everyone for supporting the channel. If you would also like to support the channel on Patreon, there's a link in the video description. You can go and see what we're offering there, and hopefully you'll want to jump on there as well. And we'll see you all next weekend here on Thinking Critical for Comics
Okay.
Aficionados.
You guys take care.
All right, peace.
Take it,
Every-